to the war in Ukraine now. As you can see, we've got Professor Michael Clarke here. The President, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, has sacked the head of the Air Force after an F-16 came down a couple of days ago. So, Professor Clarke, what do we know about that situation and why Volodymyr Zelenskyy decided to sack the head of the air wing?
Yeah, Kamali, we don't know why the F-16 came down. The first explanation was that it might have been pilot error. The second explanation is that it might have been friendly fire. Both of them are pretty controversial, and we don't know. But it definitely came down, and it is certain that the head of the Air Force, Oloschuk, Mykola Oloschuk, that's him there, he has been sacked. I mean, it's the president's prerogative to sack generals, lieutenant general, head of the Air Force, and he's now had to step down. And the F-16 issue, I mean, is always controversial in Ukraine. I mean, it's a very good air superiority fighter, but there's about 2,000 of them flying around in the world with 26 different countries. The Ukrainians have got maybe 10, maybe a dozen of them at most, and they've only got 6 pilots. They've lost one of them, of course, and they've lost the aircraft. So it'll be next year before this makes any big difference to anything, to be honest. But this F-16 was doing the right sort of job. As an air superiority fighter, it was attacking drones and cruise missiles that the Russians were sending in last week in these big wave of attacks. And the sensible way to use them is to use this air superiority characteristics to just take out the cruise missiles in particular. So it was doing the right sort of thing, but sadly they lost one, and the Americans are helping them establish what the cause might have been. We just don't know yet.
We may never know, but let's. I'm sure you'll find out for us if you can. Let's move to the fighting on the ground then, Professor Clarke, if we can. And there are, two sort of significant battlefronts at the moment. Should we start with the situation up in Kursk?
Yeah, up in Kursk, the Ukrainians are still doing pretty well. They've got this zone there, which they've consolidated. The Russians are moving in troops from all over the place, from as far away as Kaliningrad, from Crimea, from one of these Wagner-style groups from Burkina Faso has left Burkina Faso to go and join the fight for Kursk. So this week, the Battle of Kursk has really begun. And the Ukrainians are under pressure, but they're digging in, and they've not lost any territory. They may be still gaining some. So that's going on up there. But 300 miles away, the Russians are absolutely determined that they're going to take Pokrovsk and probably Chasiv Yar. They've been going at Chasiv Yar for a long time, and they've got some of it, but not all of it. Pokrovsk is as important as Chasiv Yar, and they've really pushed for this. They are losing so many men because they're using dismounted infantry. So they've got men in squads of 8 and 10 just going forward. Most of them are getting killed or injured, but they're just carrying on day and night. And the defenders of Pokrovsk, they're running out of ammunition, they're running out of men themselves, and they're running out of sleep. Wow. And so they're withdrawing, and it looks as if the Russians will take any amount of losses to get Pokrovsk. And it's not clear that the Ukrainians have dug in particularly well in Pokrovsk.
Talk to us about the significance of this area as well. Viewers will remember that we talked about the Donbas a lot, and this is these two here, Pokrovsk and Kramatorsk, are the final cities.
Very important, yeah. I mean, the Russians, they controlled a third of the Donbas before this war started. They've got another third, and they're trying to take the rest of it. And the key to it is Kramatorsk, and north of that, Slavyansk as well. But Kramatorsk in particular, if they get the high ground at Chasiv Yar, that controls the route to Kramatorsk, the route you can use, because Bakhmut is about here. You can't really get from Bakhmut to Kramatorsk because of the ground. It's just rising ground. But from here you can. And Pokrovsk is a transport hub. The Ukrainians use it for transport, and that is the route both north and westwards towards the Dnieper River and Dnipro, a very important place. I think the Russians are determined to try to take Chasiv Yar and Pokrovsk before the winter, and then next spring they will try a big offensive to grab the rest of the Donbas and maybe into Zaporizhia or some of Dnipro in any case. That's what this is all about. And if the Ukrainians lose Pokrovsk and Chasiv Yar because of what they're doing up in Kursk, because they've thinned out their forces here, then President Zelenskyy and his chief of staff, Syrsky, his chief soldier, will have some explaining to do to the Ukrainian parliament.
And they're already under a bit of pressure. There was reporting in the past few days that there is disquiet, let's put it mildly, about the fact that Pokrovsk could well fall while that situation in Kursk is ongoing.
Yes, I mean, they've gained tremendous political benefit from Kursk. They've shown that the war is not just losing slowly. They've shown what they can do. They've got the Russians rattled, that's for sure. Putin is struggling to find reasons why they haven't retaken Kursk. So they've got a lot of benefit from that. But the price may turn out to be that they've lost Pokrovsk. Now, that's not happened yet, but it might happen in the next week or two as the battle for Kursk really goes on. And if it is the case that they have had to trade Pokrovsk for the benefits of Kursk, a lot of people will, in the parliament in Ukraine and in the public, will say, is this the right strategy? Because when you're a war leader, his democratic mandate ran out in May this year. Right? He was elected in May 2019 for 5 years. So that mandate, the democratic mandate, ran out in May this year. So now his mandate is martial law. Right. He's the war leader. And I always say, when you're the war leader, you're in the same situation as a football manager. There are only so many defeats you can take before your backers and supporters decide you're not the right person. So he will come under pressure, as will his chief of staff, Zelenskyy, if it looks as if they've traded Pokrovsk for Kursk.
Always appreciate your analysis. Professor Michael Clarke, thanks so much for that.